Who's winning? And who's up shit creek without a paddle? This is your stop for unbiased election projections with BS free talk, analysis, and one cranky politico's insight into the very future of the world you live in. Broadcasting from the gateway to the motherlode in Waterford, California. This is the Election Recon Podcast. And now, he's carpet-bombing partisan zealots back to the Stone Age by delivering cold, hard reality to the fanatics first class. Your host, Army veteran, political operative, and election junkie, Josh Whitfield.
Welcome to the Election Recon Podcast. Welcome to the Oasis, episode number 2 of the 2022 election season. I'm Josh Whitfield, your host. And before we even get started, mea culpa. Already some of our loyal listeners, what few there are, we're like the Mick Foley. Shout out to Mick Foley, by the way, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. We're like the Mick Foley of podcasts, election podcasts and shows, I guess. Though, unlike the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnsons or Stone Cold Steve Austins or Hulk Hogan's with their millions and millions of fans out there, we have hundreds and hundreds or thousands and thousands of watchers and listeners right now. But a lot of you wrote in to the show saying, "Where's the cigar of the day?" And I was not smoking a cigar in the last episode. My bad. There was so much technical stuff that we were trying to work on in the previous show. So here we are. Here Thursday, July 28th, and I am smoking a cigar today. This cigar of the day, Romeo Julieta Reserva Real. It's a Nicaraguan cigar. Very good, robust cigar. I like to smoke powerful cigars. I've been smoking a long time. I started off mild, and I have worked my way up to more manlier cigars, I guess, as you go on. So that's the cigar of the day, the cigar of the show. But again, welcome to the Oasis of Reality, your stop for no BS, just straight up, where is the election at this week? Election 2022, of course. Straight election analysis. And again, first and foremost, this is a podcast by veterans, for veterans, talking about all things politics affecting your world today. But of course, it's also for you civilian types who just need a breath of fresh air from all the political, partisan zealotry and nonsense out there in the world. Very excited to be back here for episode 2. There is a little fan in the background. I hope you guys cannot hear it. They've worked hard with the condenser and the mixer and all this technical crap that I do not have any business touching, the soundboard and all this, to hopefully you guys don't hear it. But without further ado, let's get into episode 2. A little fired up today. Once again, we're going to get into it in the Grunts Perspective segment. But once again, the government fails veterans. The government fails veterans again. I'll get into that later on. My friend Ashley Stubbs will be joining us. She is a repeat guest from the first season of the Election Recon podcast. Ashley and I worked together at Meridian Pacific. a political affairs and consulting firm way back in the day. Ashley is also a political public affairs operative, and I'm going to get her unique perspective. Ashley and I don't always agree on everything, but she is somebody that I trust and adore and respect, and I think she brings a very unique perspective into the political world with her background and her insight and her wisdom, and most importantly, her life experience. So I'm very excited to have my friend Ashley Stubbs on the show today. But yes, in 1 week's time, we've seen some changes in the electorate, not much. We've had some race changes in our model. We'll get into that in the election snapshot segment coming up next. But really, we're going to keep talking about this over and over again. This election, in my opinion, is going to be a lot about the working class. There's been a lot of talk about Latino votes moving to the right, college-educated whites moving to the left. All that is true. We talked a lot about Latino voters moving to the right. We see that in all of the data. That's, again, it's not a partisan talking point. That's just fact. Anybody with two working brain cells in this industry is going to report that, should be talking about that. It's significant. It's very significant, and it's going to have an impact on this election. But it's not just Latino voters who are moving to the right. It's a broader spectrum of voters, and we're seeing a shift of college-educated voters moving to the left. College-educated whites used to be marginally with the Republican Party. They are now pretty significantly moving towards the Democratic Party. But it's the working class across all demographics that are shifting to the right. That's black, Hispanic, white, across the board, non-college educated working class voters, which there are far more of in the United States of America than college educated whites, are moving to the right. And it's a very simple reason why. It's all about the economy and inflation, and how much the economy is affecting people's everyday lives. I talked about it in the last episode. Okay, it's anybody running for office, from dog catcher to the U.S. Senate. Take this to the bank and cash it. You should be running on a vision. Okay, nobody gives a damn right now about red team bad, blue team bad. Okay, the people that are going to swing this election one way or the other, right now they care about how are you going to make their quality of life better, their cost of living cheaper, and their children safer. That's it. That is predominantly what is going on in the minds of these working class voters who are right now appear to us at Election Recon to be very motivated to vote. And that is what is driving what appears to us to be a forming red wave in this 2022 midterm election. Again, not partisan talking points. I've made no secret that I am, in fact, a registered Republican. We have Democrats and Republicans here at Election Recon. We do our best to just call the balls and strikes as we see them. We're all human, but that is our analysis, and that is our take. So, very interesting election from a geek nerd point of view going on right now, and let's get into it. So, here at Election Recon, we've had some shifts here this week in our model. 3 more seats we are now projecting the Republicans to pick up. Last week we were projecting a 13-seat pickup for the Republicans. Now it is 16 seats. Again, I think as this election gets closer to November, if the dynamics of this election do not change, if the trends hold, trending the way that they are going, I think our model is going to grow this Republican pickup by a lot more. I think we could be seeing somewhere 20, 25, 30 plus seats, and it could get even worse for Democrats if inflation does not get better, if the economy does not get better for the working class folks in the United States of America. And that's just fact. So taking a look here at the election snapshot, let's take a look now at the generic ballot for here at the Real Clear Politics average of polls. Republicans down a little bit, now 1+3 in the aggregate. Again, to point out, even though it shows a little bit of dip, you just like a heart monitor, this thing goes up and down, up and down, up and down. This is not a significant drop. Again, the summer is a weird time. There is a lot of like non-feedback bias we get from Republican voters in the summer, a lot of polls. For whatever reason, a lot of Republicans are even more apt not to answer pollsters in the summer. So the summer is kind of a weird place that it's really too early to take super serious what's going on here. And the fact that the Republicans are up and consistently up is just bad news for the Democratic Party. Remember, in 2020, Democrats had the generic ballot for almost the entire election, and Republicans still picked up seats in the House. Congress is not a national popularity contest, and in 2010, Republicans who had a massive 60-seat swing to the right, Republicans really were sitting right about where this is showing, 1.5 points, depending on what aggregate you were looking at, by election day, and they wiped the Democrats out, district to district. So keep that in mind as we have a bikini ad there showing up for those of you that are watching on YouTube. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make here is this is going to go up and down. Democrats, don't get super excited. I don't see a shift yet here in the electorate. Our model doesn't see a shift here in the electorate. I don't think most models outside of ours that are tracked right, left, or center see a major shift yet in the electorate. This is just the aggregate going up and down with the noise that the polls have out there. So let's kind of take a look at what RCP is looking at. Everything in gray here for those of you watching on YouTube is what polls they are putting into this aggregate. You see some of the more right-leaning polls. Rasmussen reports have Republicans up 10 points. We don't believe that's true. That's a likely voter sample. You'll see that most of these likely voter samples, those are pollsters saying that this is what they believe the electorate is likely to look like. That's what likely voters mean. They see Republicans dominating in this electorate. Registered voters tend to be closer. As you see here, Emerson, a poll that we take pretty seriously, Republicans +1. Much closer to the aggregate. Trafalgar Group, Republicans +8, another likely voter poll. You have 3 registered voters poll. So that's just registered voters. These are not likely voters. These are just a sample of all registered voters. You have The Economist and YouGov having Democrats up 6 in their poll. USA Today Suffolk, Democrats +4. Politico Morning Consult, Democrats +4. Geopolitics, a battleground, that's kind of a new one here in the aggregate. Democrats +2, that's within the margin of error. Quinnipiac, Democrats +1, that's registered voters. Fox News, registered voters, Republicans +3. CNBC, Republicans +2. New York Times, Siena College, Republicans +1. And Insider Advantage, Republicans +8. That all aggregates out to a Republican 1+3 advantage in the aggregate of polls. So not a big shift from last week, about a 1-point swing, but when we look at the aggregate, that's not a huge flip like we see happening in November, December of last year, where Republicans really swung almost in a 10 to 15 point swing the electorate in the generic ballot in the other direction. So just some food for thought there. And what's driving that? Really, the president's approval rate. There's a lot of people out there saying right now that the president's approval is not necessarily going to affect the electorate. I've heard a lot of talking pundits on major news networks say that this week. It's kind of laughable because history that would be going against history in a midterm election. Donald Trump was very unpopular in 2018, and Republicans took it on the chin. In 2010, President Barack Obama, very unpopular. Democrats took it on the chin. And you see that with very few exceptions throughout modern history, going back to since polling was taken very seriously. So in modern times, we have seen the party in power, the party in the White House has normally lost seats in the midterm election. But when the president's approval rating is as low as it is, and Joe Biden is at Jimmy Carter levels of disapproval, like, this is abysmal for the president of the United States. He is seen by the electorate as the leader of the Democratic Party as well as the leader of the United States, and the electorate is laying their frustrations and their anxieties at the president's feet. There can be no question about that. And that is going to play in the minds of a significant number of voters. And there's no doubt that Joe Biden's unpopularity at this point is weighing down the Democratic Party in these midterm elections. That's why so many Democrats do not want President Biden to campaign with them in competitive districts across the country, because they don't want to deal with his unpopularity. They don't want to run with the voters' frustrations in their district. They want to run on a different message, on a more local message of what they can do in their district, and that's why you're seeing a lot of Democrat members of Congress and the U.S. Senate not asking the President of the United States to show up and campaign for them. That's just fact. That's just kind of politics 101. A lot of campaign consultants out there are telling their clients, yeah, not a good idea for the President of the United States to show up. Now, that's not true for every district. In more progressives, more Democratic districts, the president may be helpful there, but in these Democratic safe districts, they're not very competitive. So the president showing up there and stumping his national message isn't going to hurt those candidates' chances for re-election or election, depending on what's going on in those districts, and is not going to hurt the president. So that's just kind of where things are generically across the country right now. Not a big shift from last week to this week, in our opinion, at all. Let's take a look at 538. We were really surprised. I was surprised last week that the 538 model had Republicans favored to ever so slightly to win the Senate. Their model shifted this week. The Democrats now have a very slight advantage to hold the Senate, kind of mirroring our model. Our model did not move in the Senate much whatsoever. Senate-wise, our model state to state is exactly the same. We still show about a 55% chance for the Democrats to retain the Senate right now, as it stands, where the 538 model has it about 53% for the Democrats. So our model's still trending just a hair left of 538, which still surprises me a little bit. I don't pretend to be a mathematical genius. I do love data. I do love the numbers. Lauren Mayfield is our mathematical genius here at Election Recon, and she's the one that really chews out the numbers for us. So personally surprising to me, but we followed the math, we followed the data here. We did take a look at the House forecast. Now our model trends to the right of 538 for the House, They have Republicans about an 83% chance to win control of the House. Our model has it significantly higher, 96%, almost a sure bet that the Republicans are going to take control of the House as it stands right now in November. We're pretty confident that Republicans are going to take control of the U.S. House of Representatives. Again, we're projecting a fairly modest 16 seat gain. I guess historically 16 seats wouldn't be modest, but I think there's a lot of Republicans out there that are just believe a significantly higher number of seats are going to go their way, and that is certainly possible. I personally believe that myself. I don't know about these 50, 60 seats. I've even heard some people talk about 70 seats. That's a far stretch in my mind. But I do believe, Republicans are, they only need to flip about 6 seats to take control of the U.S. House of Representatives. Right now, we're projecting 16 seats. Again, we had 3 seats flip for Republicans in our model. Let's take a look at those right now. First would be the California 22nd, where we have David Valadao now flipping the race in our model against Rudy Salas. We have David Valadao with about a 50.5%, 50.3% of the vote share over Rudy Salas, who is a California State Assembly member. Of course, David Valadao is the incumbent Republican in that redrawn district from redistricting. California 27th, a rematch between Mike Garcia and former California State Assemblywoman Christy Smith. We have Mike Garcia now about 50.5% over Christy Smith in the California 27th district, and the Oregon 5th. We have a flip in our model as well. That's Lori Chavez DeReamer, now about 51% over Jamie McLeod Skinner in the Oregon 5th district. So those are 3 seats, all flipping and moving in favor of the Republican Party in the U.S. House in our model this week. No changes in the Senate, no changes in state ledge, no changes in the governor's model for the election recon this week. So that is where the election currently stands for us. We can take a look at the total scoreboard here at Election Recon. 229 seats projected for Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives, 206 seats for Democrats. In the U.S. Senate, 50-50 split, still no change net for either party. Of course, a 50-50 tie will go to the Democrats by virtue of Vice President Kamala Harris having the tie-breaking vote in the Senate chamber. And in the governor's model, we still have 27 Republican governors projected in 50 states and 23 Democrats when things are all said and done. In the state legislatures, Republicans doing very, very well down ballot. They, in our model, projecting 32 upper chambers. That's state senates, including the Nebraska unicameral chamber. They only have 1 chamber in their state legislature. So we have 32 Republicans in the uppers, 18 Democrats, and 33 Republican-controlled chambers in the lower chambers. That's these state houses, the state assemblies, stuff like this, and 16 for the Democrats in the state legislature. So that is the snapshot of the election as it stands today, Thursday, July 28th, here at Election Recon. And now, without further ado, it is my privilege to bring my friend, my former colleague, Ashley Stubbs, and we will go to my interview right now with Ashley. So, Ashley Stubbs, my dear friend, welcome back. You are the first repeat customer to the Election Recon podcast, season 2. Very excited to have you back on. It is almost 8 o'clock on the West Coast, and it's this happy hour. So, cheers to you.
Cheers.
So, I introduced you to the viewership, the audience, but instead of going into this big long recap of who you are, audience knows, we used to work together for Meridian Pacific, and we were both political operatives together way back when, and all this. But bring us up to speed on what you got going on now.
Sure. Well, I am now back in my hometown of Benton City in Eastern Washington State, home of the 4th Congressional District. I'm now working as the Deputy Chief of Staff for Congressman Dan Newhouse. That said, I'm still a political hack like Josh. Back in the day, that's the type of fun stuff I like to do afterwards. And I think all of the postulating we do today will in no way reflect my employer.
Yeah, I think the audience gets the gist of that.
Okay.
We're doing
Perfect.
we're doing this off hours on our own
That's
time.
right.
No one's making money here, and this is clearly a low budget production. So
Yeah.
Just a bunch of political geeks geeking out in the off hours. So, I'd like to know, there's been a lot of talk this cycle about what we're seeing in the polls and in the data, and I think across the board, it's very clear that the white college-educated voter is moving to the left. The working class voter, especially the Latino working class voter. Now, I mean, Latinos, they don't vote. They're not a monolithic vote. They spread their vote around, but generally the Latino vote is trending now to the right, especially in that working class sector. But we're seeing that working class vote trend to the right across all demographics. I'm wondering, why do you think that is? What are you seeing on the ground? You have a very important primary coming up on Tuesday. You have your ear to the ground on these things. In your opinion, what's going on that you think this college educated white voter is moving to the left? Because I would say that Washington State is weighted heavily by that demographic. Why are we seeing this flip really in the demographics going to either party?
Yeah, I mean, well, the first thing that comes to mind immediately is just geography. And each of the counties and zip codes are becoming more and more and more politically divided, more partisan, further apart from each other. And so I think, you partner that with where are the jobs that folks with advanced degrees are going to go. It's in the urban areas. It's in dense cities. That's where your doctors are going to gather. And so, I mean, that's the first thing that comes to mind. And I think it's also reasonable to think that folks who move to urban areas are going to be drawn to more liberal policies because they're in dense areas and they want government services. They want public transportation. They want all of those things that folks in rural areas frankly don't want or don't need, and they've moved to that area because they don't want that. They want to be left alone. Those are kind of my first initial thoughts, but I'm curious what your take is.
Yeah, I mean, I think the easy answer for the working class moving to the right is not necessarily anything the Republican Party's done. I think the Republican Party nationally has a terrible marketing problem. I think the Republican Party has a terrible marketing problem for a very long time.
Yeah.
But I just think it's just right now the Democrats have control of both chambers of the federal government. They have control of the White House, and gas is high. Groceries are high. Crime is high, and the working and crime is high. Crime isn't high in Beverly Hills, right? It's high in South Central, right? So I think working class families are feeling left behind, and I would say too is probably a little bit this battle. There's been a unique thing I think too that's not really talked about. There's a real civil war going on in the Democratic Party. Certainly, there's plenty of civil wars going on in the Republican Party, but there's a unique civil war going on in the Democratic Party, I think, between environmentalism and labor. And I really think labor's up for grabs, and we're kind of seeing that here too. I think labor's feeling left behind. I think.
And on the labor side of it, no, that's perfect, because you mentioned Hispanics and Latinos, and they're so many of the Latino folks that come to the country. I mean, they want to be contributing, hardworking people. They want to be Americans. They came here because they see the potential of our country, and now they're starting to wise up, and they want a little representation for all their hard work.
Well, yeah, and I think too. I think I think we saw this a little bit in 2018, a disenfranchisement of certain sectors of the Republican Party, or the country gave the Republican Party power, and there wasn't a whole lot to show for it in the first 2 years. I think a lot of Hispanic and working class voters, Democrats have been in charge for 2 years, and I don't think anybody across the board can say that they're, whether it's fair not to put the economy on the president, and that's not what I'm debating here. The economy always gets put on the president,
right?
And the party in power. And when Congress is split, you can split the blame a little bit, but you really can't split the blame here, even though the majority party's trying to do that to their heart's content. I just think it's falling on dead ears, because all the policies since really 2020 to 2022, COVID, everything, people are just hurting, and they're going to take their frustrations out at the ballot box. And I think it's a very small group of undecided voters, but they'll still sway a lot of these swing districts. I mean, a 2 point swing could determine 20, 30 seats in the U.S. House, for instance, and so I think it's going to be a very interesting election where we do see a very dynamic shift.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you talk about working families and the economy, and I think the administration is deeply out of touch right now with the real pain that working families are feeling. I mean, you saw just the other day when the press secretary absolutely refused to define what recession would be.
It's insane. And it's not even like, and again, in all fairness, all listeners out, you have two Republicans talking here, so we want to be fair. We like to call things down the middle, but it's just when you're insiders, when you're in the game like we are, we can't help but laugh, because listen, press secretaries' jobs are to spin. You have to play defense all the time.
Yeah,
I can't think of a worse job on the political planet than to be the White House press secretary. So just taking it on the chin every day. But I mean, you have to have a better answer than this. But it's another dynamic that's really playing out. It happens in every election. You and I have been around and we've seen this done, but it's really coming into play here especially with the D-Trip, who are really spending a lot of money on more right-wing candidates right now. They're literally pushing the thing they hate the most with the expectation that they're more moderate or establishment candidates will have a better chance to defeat the more right-wing candidates in November in a general election. They've had some success, some failures, but boy, I'm looking at the data, and I think this could really come back to backfire the Democratic Party.
And not just backfire on the Democratic Party. It backfires on America. It backfires on all of us, on the community, on the partisanship of Congress. I mean, I could go on and on about that. But, well, my first thought is just this is sort of the next iteration of your grandparents' version of registering for the other party's primary so you can vote for the weaker candidate. And I honestly think you and I are very fortunate to live in states where I think we've solved this problem. We wouldn't be experiencing this if all states embraced the jungle primary. So I'll go on. For folks that don't know, jungle primary is just where top two candidates advance no matter what. There's not a party primary. And honestly, I think that a jungle primary is one of the most democratic systems that can exist. And I don't know that we would see parties or like the DCCC or the DNC or even the DGA jumping in this way and spending this type of money if there were open primaries. The risks would just be a lot higher. Everything would be spread a lot wider. And I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think before this cycle, I would have tended to agree with you that the jungle primary was a buffer against this. But yeah, in California, like in Senate District 4, for instance, there is a lot of spending by both parties, and it's a very Republican district. And 5 or 6 Republican candidates, 2 Democratic candidates. 2 Democratic candidates are in the top 2 in the final vote count in a district that has no business being represented by a Democrat. So, I think there's pros and cons. I bet the constituents of SD4 are not fans of the jungle primary right now. But we also saw in many state races, congressional and state legislative races in California, both sides, the CRP and the California Democratic Party both play heavily to try to get their preferred candidates, even in the jungle primary, which is very interesting. I think that's a change of tactics. I think it came with more mixed results than a typical primary system. But we still saw both parties try to play that way now more than ever. And I do think it is a disservice to the country, regardless of the primary system, because everyone hates moderates. Everyone, like Democrats, hate Sinema and Manchin.
Yeah. What do they say, that the middle is the loneliest place?
Right. Republicans can't stand Murkowski and Collins and Romney, but somebody has got to be able to talk to the other side. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And right now, the country's so pissed off at each other. But like I know that's going to be very unpopular. I'm going to get a lot of hate on that in the comment section and in the emails. But I mean, listen, the gears of government must turn, even if you don't like how the sausage is being made. Otherwise, you're going to continue to get failed government over and over and over again. People have to talk to each other and broker deals in divided government. So
no, I agree.
And this, sorry to interrupt, but this both sides trying to destroy each other's moderates by putting each other's ultra partisans in play, I think is going to be really, really bad for the next 2 to 4 years.
Oh man. Well, you've got my head run. Okay, so I have a bunch of thoughts here. But I guess the first one, I'm just super curious to know, do you think that group spending to promote a candidate of the other party that you think you can beat, do you think that that's dirty or unethical?
Not illegal. It says on the ads, paid for by the D-Trip, paid for by the RNCC. It says there at some point. Yes, I think it's unethical. I do, but at some point the voters have to do the dang research. Like you gotta understand you gotta know who's putting this crap out, who's feeding you. Don't just eat the food on the table. Know who's cooking it. Right. And at some point I put the onus back on the people. I don't buy into this argument. And again, this will be another very unpopular thing I'm about to say. I still believe sovereign power rests with the people and the voters. I'm convinced of that. But the voters, and I get it, they're stressed, they're working 2 jobs. There's 1,000 reasons for the voters to be apathetic and stressed out right now. But this is your birthright as an American citizen. You have to pay attention to who and what you're voting for. You have to be educated, and you can't be one issue voters. It's way too much one issue vote. You and I experience that all the time.
Oh yeah.
If being a one issue voter is akin to shooting yourself in the foot. I think our great grandparents were way better about voting the character of an individual than voting the politics of an individual. I mean, you're talking about a generation that voted for FDR 4 times, then put in Eisenhower overwhelmingly in the White House. And then,
what's so interesting, and I don't mean to go on too big of a tangent, but I recently was at a county party meeting where they were endorsing candidates running for office. And I was just so frustrated by the fact that the audience was so sucked into the idea of asking folks who are running for county commissioner or city council their stances on Dobbs and controversial, all these crazy headline Fox News controversial issues that have absolutely nothing to do with being a good county commissioner, county supervisor, or prosecuting attorney, or it just really frustrated me. And I think it goes back to, Josh, what you were saying about, our grandparents voted on character and frankly experience. I think if people came in and they said, look, I have XYZ experience, this is what I want to change, that's what matters to me, if they can do the job.
I agree with you in principle, but I mean, like George Soros and the progressive prosecutor movement, I mean, he's really put these, I think it's fair to say, he's put these local government races in the partisan side of things. And we are seeing a voter backlash. I mean, I never thought in my life I'd see a San Francisco DA recalled by San Francisco voters. I mean,
I think it's swinging. The pendulum is swinging.
I think this guy Gascon in LA is in deep trouble. Because I think there's just common sense stuff like people want to be safe, right? I mean, you could be pro reforming of law enforcement and still pro law enforcement. Does that make sense? Like you could still be like, the laws still have to be enforced, but I'd like different things being done. Now, I'm personally really pro police, so I don't want anybody to take that as I'm not pro police. I'm very pro police. I'm just saying you could be a Democrat, obviously, in San Francisco and say, I want my laws enforced, even if I have different political views about law enforcement.
Well, and not that I'm defending anything or any side, but frankly, the defund the police movement is one of the worst branded campaigns I've ever heard in my life, because the majority of people that I talk to, they don't want to take all the money away from the police. They want all of these reforms that I'm like, oh, well, I mean, maybe I could, but why the hell would you call it defund the police? Talk about bad branding. Jesus.
Yeah, man. I even think, even if that was branded correctly, and obviously that's terrible branding, terrible.
Yeah.
But I don't think a majority of the country's there either. I think they want strong, efficient policing in their neighborhoods. Right. I even think in we see that in the polling. Like, I think there's even a more so than white communities. I see it in polling data that minority communities want very strong, efficient policing. I think they want a little more community policing, a little less
authoritarian.
Force, and again, that's a whole nother debate for a whole nother time. But my point is the mainstream media gets so caught up on the broad brushstrokes, they miss the details and they miss really representing what the people are trying to say, what they want. So I'll give you the last word.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I would like to give my time to Josh Whitfield. I would really like your hot take on the 3rd and 4th congressional districts in Washington State. Primaries coming up on Tuesday. We have Jamie Herrera Butler and Dan Newhouse. How do you think it's going to go?
I like the incumbents' chance. I haven't paid too much attention to the primaries there, but in those two states, incumbents tend to do well in the primaries. I think what concerns me for the incumbents is the amount of challengers that are there. That being said, I think there will be a dilution of the challenging vote. And just like we saw in California's SD4, not to bring up a race that I'm familiar with, but when voters don't know who to vote for, they're going to go to who they know. And so I would hesitate to make a prediction because it's been such a crazy primary cycle. It's District 4, for instance, very conservative district. It's going to be interesting. If you had to put a gun to my head, and again, I really haven't seen the data on these two districts primary wise, because we're here at Election Recon, we're so general election focused. My gut tells me the incumbents are going to be okay in their primaries.
Well, I really put you on the spot. Thanks for being so articulate.
But I could be very wrong. So the
point of all of this, you're obviously going to have to invite me back so that we can talk.
You can trash me if I'm wrong. Thanks so much for being on the show today. We'll see you next time.
You got it. Bye, Josh.
Again, that was my friend, Ashley Stubbs. I'm always just such a privilege to have my friend. Always excited to have Ashley come on and provide us with her wisdom and her take and insight on what's going on across the country with her unique perspective. Thank you, Ashley, for giving us your valuable time. I know you have a primary coming up on Tuesday that is very important to you, so this was definitely valuable time that you gave us. So thank you so much, Ashley. I want to go into now the Grunts perspective, our brand new segment this season. Like we said in the first episode, we felt like we kind of got away in season 1 heading into the chaos of 2020. of really talking about veterans issues on this podcast, which is first and foremost for veterans by veterans. And there's something that happened this week that just really pissed me off. Okay, it's just, I mean, everyone pays lip service to veterans. Everyone pays lip service to veterans. Oh, we want to take care of our vets. Every member of Congress, from both the Republican Party to the Democratic Party, pays all this kind of lip service to veterans about how they're going to take care of us, how we're not going to repeat the mistakes of the past, and all this nonsense. And there seemed to me to be a common sense, what should have been a bipartisan, and I'm sure if it actually came to a vote and it cleared cloture in the Senate, cloture is the 60 vote threshold that most legislation is required to be able to come to a vote to end the Senate filibuster in the Senate, to pass what should be what I thought was a common sense thing for veterans' health care and benefits, a boosting package to take care of some of the continuing shortfalls for veterans across the country. And it's so frustrating that politics continues to get in the way of veterans' health care and the return side of the deal. The return side of the deal that we made with the country when we signed up to serve the nation. And I get so emotional about this stuff that I'm just going to let the Democratic Senator Jon Tester, he's not known for giving these passionate speeches on the floor. He's not one of these guys who comes to the floor a whole lot and hammers one side or the other. I'm going to hand it over to Senator Tester, okay? And he's a Democrat, but I think he says it for a majority of veterans here. And let's pass it down to Mr. Tester.
Make no mistake about this. The American people are sick and tired of the games that go on in this body. They're sick and tired of us working for Democrats or working for Republicans and not working for the American people. But this is bigger than that. We have an all-volunteer military in this country. If you don't think young people are watching what we're doing today, that are thinking about signing up for the military, you're sadly mistaken. And when we don't take care of our veterans when they come home, they're going to say, why should I ever sign the dotted line? Because the promises that I made and the promises the country made, only half that deal is being respected. My half. This is a sad day in the United States Senate. This is the biggest issue facing our veterans today. Make no mistake about it. If it wasn't, every veteran service organization wouldn't be out there talking to us and have been talking to me for the last 15 years. So we can make up all sorts of excuses about how this is going to move money around, but let me tell you something. We're the ones that decide that. If we want to move money around, we will. If we don't, we won't. In the meantime, let's pass this bill. Let's get veterans the health care they've earned. If it isn't, it's political malpractice. What we're doing today with this policy, by putting this policy off, does nobody any good whatsoever.
Senator said it perfectly. I think he spoke for a lot of veterans. It's a rare moment where, in this modern day of the U.S. political class, where a representative comes to the floor and actually says what his veteran constituents, what's on their mind. So much of the veteran community doesn't give a shit, doesn't give two flying Fs whatsoever about the politics, Republican and Democrat, when it comes to us getting the health care we deserve. We're tired of the talk. We're sick and tired of both sides, presidents from both sides, Congresses from both sides, for years and years and years, from all the way from the Vietnam War, from that generation to this current generation of veterans. It's way better for my generation of veterans, the Iraq and Afghanistan generation of veterans, but it's not good enough. The promises that have been made to countless generations of veterans who put on the uniform, who go and serve, who screw up their backs, who screw up their knees, everything, traumatic brain injury, all of it, PTSD, all these things that we now know, without a shadow of a doubt, are consequences of going to war on behalf of the country. And the government continues to fail veterans time and time and time again on healthcare. Endless bureaucracy, endless red tape, endless excuses. It's time to just put, if we consent, and I support defending democracy in Eastern Europe. I support all of this stuff, okay? But if we can send $60 billion to Ukraine, we can spend a couple $1 billion on veterans' health care here at home. If we can allow and spend billions of dollars in the state of California on undocumented immigrants, we can spend a few $1 billion on veterans in the United States of America to fix the endless bureaucracy. You want to know a major contributing factor of 22 a day, of 22 of my brothers and sisters putting shotguns in their mouths or swallowing pills or succumbing to the silent enemy of depression and fatigue and whatever? It's not getting the help that they deserve and they were promised time and time and time again. And it's time to quit talking about it. It's time to do something about it for real. Not half measures, not BS. Just Congress, just get it done. Do your goddamn job. Do what you were elected to do. Take care of those people who gave up significant portions of their lives in service of the nation for your elitist, pompous, privileged asses. Do the job for them. Quit making veterans travel 2.5 hours to VA hospitals across this country. Let them go to local ERs. Quit sending veterans who are already on the lower median income of Americans in this country predominantly, back-breaking medical bills because they had to take an ambulance ride to their local hospital for having heart attacks or some other stuff. Okay? And don't give me this BS that there's all this other stuff out there. The VA screws veterans every single day in this country because of the bureaucracy. Give them the benefits they deserve. Not some of them, all of them. And that's the Grunts perspective this week. And now it's time to finish here with the three-pointer segment. I'm going to see if I can do this because I get very emotional about this issue. I don't understand how it's 2022. How it's 2022, over 100 years since the First World War. A whole century. Approaching a century. In 20 years, it'll be a century from the Second World War. And God willing, in my lifetime, it's going to be a century from that I'll be alive, God willing. Not God willing that we're still going to have this problem, but God, soon it's going to be a century since the Vietnam War, and we still have this problem. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Going to the three-pointer segment where you get to ask your questions to me. You can DM us on social media, or you can write in. They can be as piffy and angry and as mean as you want. We have thick skin here. We're veterans. We don't give a shit. Say what you got to say to us. We don't care. Where we pick 3 of your questions and answer them here live. Well, not live, but recorded on the show. You could write to us at Elect Recon. That's singular. electrecon@gmail.com. electrecon@gmail.com. Or you can DM us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. And without further ado, let's go into your questions. This is the three-pointer segment. Let's get right into it. First three-pointer question is from Olivia from Las Vegas. It's an email question, and she says more of a statement, which is fine by us. And she says, your YouTube videos could use a lot of work. They kind of suck and could use professional help. Olivia, look, none of us here are YouTube professionals. None of us here are audio video professionals. We got Jeff, we got Lauren, we got me. We're making the best of it. We're learning. We're trying to build the best content we can for folks. We're learning as time goes on. This is only our second season. We're doing the absolute best that we can, and we're going to keep trying to make it better. So if you know how to make it better, if you have suggestions, comment below on YouTube or add us at Instagram or Twitter or on Facebook. We're totally open to suggestions. Again, we got thick skin. Throw any of your suggestions on how you feel we can make this show better, make the content better. But hey, you're tuning in. I don't know. So, Olivia, thanks for writing into the show. The next question comes from Feminist Light. Light like the light, like the light bulb, not light like LITE. Feminist Light 420. This is a DM from social media coming from the Instagram. You are nothing but another fascist pig. This is a good one. You're nothing but another fascist pig spouting Nazi GOP propaganda on the internet. A true patriot would support their president. Well, it's not the first time I've been called a Nazi or a pig. So probably won't be the last. I guess that's virtue of being a white male Republican, I guess. I don't know. But listen, I support the President of the United States. I have great reverence for that office. And I truly, as God stands before me, I want the President of the United States to succeed. If the President succeeds, our country succeeds, and we all succeed. Do not mistake me here. I am only reporting the facts in the data week in and week out on this show. I'm not the one telling pollsters that they're unhappy with the president. The people are. It's not my fault that Joe Biden, the president of the United States, is in the high 30s in approval rating. It's not anything I have done, this show has done, that has driven Joe Biden's approval rating to 38%. That's not me. That's not me. This is not. It's not me. I don't take responsibility for that. The man has to be held accountable for his job performance, and his job performance isn't great. People are suffering. Gas prices are out of control. The economy is not great. Prices at the grocery store for working class Americans are out of control, and that is feeding their anger and anxieties. The crime is out of control. They're worried about Russia and Ukraine and China and the possibility of a world war and all this stuff. It's similar stuff to what happened to Jimmy Carter when Ronald Reagan ended up sweeping into power. This is really history repeating itself. This is not me. I will never be one of these people that hopes one party or the other fails so the other party can win. I think that is absolutely a horrible, anti-un-American way to look at things. I root for America always. I want America to win, all Americans. I want us collectively as a nation to reach the ideals that we aspire to achieve. I want America to truly be that shining beacon on the hill. And I want everyone in America to live a great life. I truly, truly do. And it is not the fault of myself or the folks out there that our government continues to not get the job done. And listen, it would be fair to say that the governments for a long time, Republican or Democrat, have failed to meet the mark. I think that would be very, very fair to say, Feminist Light 420. hopefully you can light up your 420 tonight and zimmer out a little bit. And listen, when we resort to name calling, which you can write in and curse me out all you want. I'm just saying, think about this. This type of comments is why we're at. There's nothing of value there. Not one time will you have ever seen in any of my podcasts where you've seen me attack a sitting president of the United States. That's never going to happen. I'm just reporting the facts as the data is showing. The data is showing here that nearly 6 in 10 of Americans are not happy with the president's job performance. That's just the reality that the world is today. That's just fact. So thank you for writing in. Again, send in your comments, piffy comments, mean comments. None of that phases us here. We're happy to answer any questions. We'll take it on the channel. The next question comes from Susan R. from Fargo, North Dakota. She says, Newt said on Fox News, Newt Gingrich, I imagine, Newt said on Fox News this weekend that Republicans are going to win 40 plus seats in the House and pick up the Senate. Your projections are wrong. A MAGA America wave is coming this November. Could be. Listen, there's a long way between now and November. What our model is showing is what, if the election were going to be held today, this is what our model believes the election would show. Waves generally show in the last month of the election, October. October, if a tsunami, a red tsunami is going to form, and I think it is far more likely than not right now that a red tsunami will form. I think it's more likely that by a wide margin than Democrats will hold on to the House in comparison. Okay, Susan. However, right now, with all the data that we have with the map, like, we don't put our personal opinions into it. Just because I believe that there will be more Republican pickups than our model is currently showing, that's not what the model says right now, and we just stick to the data here. That's it. I think that the dynamics, the metrics of this election, the environment that is shaping up to be, probably supports. Listen, Newt Gingrich is a smart guy. He was Speaker of the House for a long time. He knows politics. He's well respected within Republican circles. No question about any of that. But he also is biased to the Republican side, and you got to take that with a grain of salt as well. He's a well entrenched establishment Republican. So again, I encourage everybody. Don't just follow one news source. Don't follow just Fox News or MSNBC or CNN or whatever. Okay, take in a plethora, a wide range of sources, and then come to your own decision and conclusions about what is reality, your reality, and come to your own opinions. And so, don't take my word for it. Don't take Newt Gingrich's word for it. Come to your own belief. If you believe a massive MAGA red wave is going to come, then that's great. Right now, our model doesn't show it. We're going to stick with our model. It was very accurate in 2020. It was accurate in 2021. That does not yet a pattern make. We believe that here. Lauren says that all the time to us. But this election, I think, if we get 3 elections right in a row, our confidence, our ego, going to grow a little bit. So, just kind of keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Don't just stay in your echo chamber. People staying in their own echo chambers, hearing what they want to hear, is a lot of reason why we have the problems in this country and the world we do today. That's all I got to say about that. We do agree that this is a Republican election to lose. But they could still lose it. There are entire political lifetimes between now and November. Elections can be won and lost multiple times between now and then. So nothing is in the bag yet. Don't believe for a minute that anything is locked up with any certainty. There's a long, long road to go before November and the conclusion of election 2020. So with that, that is episode 2 of the Election Recon podcast. I'm Josh Whitfield. Please like and subscribe, mash the like button, comment, all that stuff. We sure would appreciate it. Trying to rebuild our audience from being off for about a year. Again, we're not making any money here. This is just something that we do on our free time. We all have day jobs. We do sure enjoy doing it. We're political geeks and nerds, and we love chewing through the numbers. We love talking to our fellow veterans week in and week out, talking to you civilian types that are dropping by to say hello week in and week out. We love you. We appreciate you. Please like and subscribe. Follow us at Election Recon on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can email us at electrecon. It's elect singular, electrecon@gmail.com. And you can check our website out at electionrecon.com. That's electionrecon.com. We will see you next week. Thank you and goodbye.